Okay, so picking up right where we left off from the last video, we just used a PDF file and Python to create our new JSON file. We've made sure that our JSON file is linted appropriately, and now we are ready to dive into the CLI. So you can look online and get a lot of pre-made scripts right from Amazon Web Services. If you just go to the AWS CLI reference, there's a lot of pre-made scripts there that are somewhat what you need. And remember, I was saying earlier that you can look at this particular export, and hypothetically, you could take this entire text and copy and paste it to your command line interface in your command prompt or in your terminal. But a lot of the stuff in here you don't need, and because it was mapping to one specific file, this time we're actually mapping to a JSON file. But I'm going to leave this open for a minute because I do want to show you a few things. If I go over here and I look at my AWS CLI file, this is one that I grabbed from online, and I basically just modified it for my purposes. You know, it's basically the same. You've got AWS EMR create cluster. You've got the name of your cluster here. I actually robbed the release label EMR 5.11.0 from this AWS CLI export. You can see it right here in this part. And just to make sure I was using the right one, use default roles is fine. EC2 attributes should be set up with your subnet ID, which also comes out of this particular file. You can get it from the main page from your last cluster too. You do want to set it up to auto terminate. Your log URI comes directly from your S3 bucket. You can look in the top of your S3 bucket. The very root node of your root folder of your S3 bucket has a log folder in it. You can put that there. You definitely want to enable debugging. Then setting up your instance groups. These need to reflect exactly what the last cluster was that you ran in the web console. So remember, we had a master and we had a core. We had one instance count of each. Here's the master, here's one instance count. They were M3 extra large on the master, one core, one instance count, and M3 extra large on the core. And then at the very end, you have to add this steps and the direct link, direct path to your JSON file. Okay, now my JSON file is sitting in the exact same folder that I'm going to run this from. So I'm going to go here. You know what? I'm going to call this test 2 because I've already run this one time, and it's my intention to run it again and then terminate it so you can at least see what happens in the command line. So I am in the actual folder where my JSON file exists. Right, you can see there's test1 JSON and there's test1 JSON. So I'm just going to dump this right into it. Now when I hit enter, you can see it gave me an error, and this is a perfect example of what happens when you have a comma or bracket or some type of informatted object inside your JSON file. You'd spend days looking to see what you've got wrong in your actual script, and it's not in that at all. So I've gone back, checked my JSON file, visited a linter. I did have a missing bracket in it. Everything is good to go now. So let's check. We go. All right, when you hit enter, you're going to get just a quick pause, and then the cluster ID is going to pop up. Now, this is exactly what you want to happen. So if I go over here and I take a look inside my AWS, let me close this out of the way here. I'm going to terminate this before it gets to running too far because it's going to start to overwrite some buckets because I didn't change any of my JSON file. But you can see there it is. It's starting to spin up. The last one I ran with 10 wet files and it was about 40 minutes long. So you can just sit and let it run. I'm gonna go ahead and terminate it because I don't want to get charged anymore for it because I've already run one. So this is what the one I ran earlier looks like. After it finishes, you can see every single step. You can notice that some of them actually ran for 6 minutes. Some of them ran for 12 minutes. Some of them only ran for a minute. So these are varying sizes of wet file archives. So don't sweat it. You know, if it's going to run a little longer, a little shorter on each one of those. So now I can go over here to my S3 and let's take a look at the output, because we told EMR to put this the first time, to put this in a bucket called test1. This is what your output's going to look like. You have a bucket now for every individual wet file archive that you mapped. You can open these and you can see, just like prior when you did this in the web console, they all have part files in them now. Okay, so last but not least, I am going to go into my folder. Let's check our directories. We don't have any other folders in here, but what I want to do is download all these folders that I've just used EMR to push all the output to on S3, and I want to download them to my machine so I can concatenate all these files together. And so let's take a look at how to do that. You can do this with programs like CyberDuck. You can do it with other S3 browser tools. I actually like using the CLI to do this. So I'm going to download these files, and then I'm going to stop the video so we can get the third one in when we go to concatenate everything together and build our sentiment. So I don't have an output bucket in this right now, so I'm going to make one and just call it output. And now you can see if I run a directory here, I've got a new directory called output. So now I'm going to use CD, and I'm going to actually change to that output bucket. Now, what I can use AWS to actually sync my S3 bucket that I've downloaded to the folder that I'm in now. So I've got it on the screen there, EMR bucket, and it's an output bucket, and I want to sync test1. So all of test1 can actually come to this output folder. So I think that's everything that I need. Let's look and see. Okay, so on that one I misspelled it, so let's try it again. Now, there we go. So now we've downloaded all of those buckets directly to output. So now you can see I've got every single bucket that came from this folder. I've got it now in my own output bucket on my desktop. So that's what I want. So in the next video, we're going to copy some files over to this, concatenate everything together, and build our sentiment files. So stay tuned for that in the next video.